Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name's Tank, and if it's your first time here and you don't know me, I'm a roadie with about 18 years of experience in the touring music industry. Currently, I'm a tour manager, but over the years, I've done a lot of different things, from being a backline tech to a merchandise manager, a lighting director, a pyro technician, and probably a few other things, but that's not really important. Today, I want to do a video about all the different job titles on tour and what they actually do. Because I've realized lately that sometimes there's a lot of confusion with the general public about what these titles mean and what people do on the road. I mean, I've told people I'm a tour manager and they think that means I'm the band's actual manager, which is very different. Now, I don't say any of that to make anybody feel bad. You wouldn't know this. Most of these terms are specifically related to touring, and only people that tour would probably know them. But I felt like this might be a cool thing to do just to, I don't know, get a little information out there. But real quick, before we start, let's go over that term roadie really quick, because there's a lot of different opinions on it, and there's a lot of people that think it means different things. But to put it quite simply, a roadie is somebody that tours with a band and does work for a band. That's it. It's pretty basic. There are some people in the industry that think that it's a negative term, like calling somebody a roadie is demeaning for some reason. And I will admit, when I was younger, I thought that too, until I got older, learned from some of the veteran roadies that it's actually more of a term of endearment. And it is also not to be confused with the term groupie, which is something completely different. So if anybody ever tells you they are a roadie for a band, that just means specifically that they work for a band and they tour with them every day. Now, before we dive into all of this, I'm going to break this down into different categories. I'm going to talk about the band and artists. Believe it or not, there are a few definitions in there we should probably cover. I'm going to talk about off-the-road management positions, on-the-road management positions, and then pretty standard crew positions as well. Now, the bigger or smaller a tour is, you might see some of these on a tour, or there might be things I don't cover in this video. There are a ton of different jobs that you can have on the road. The ones that I chose to cover in this are just pretty typical ones that you would see. But let's start off here with some band terminology and start with artist. Now, artist is kind of an encompassing term that refers to anybody that's in the actual band. If they're a band member, they're an artist. But there are times where that changes, specifically if you're dealing with a country musician or a hip hop act or a pop act or something like that. You may hear the main person referred to as the artist and everybody else referred to as band members. You might often hear the term principal artist as well, which basically means that they're kind of the head honcho. They're the important one. I don't think anybody wants to say that, but that's what principal artist means. And as we've already brought up, band members too. That can be an encompassing term that just means anybody in a band, and you often hear that when you're dealing with rock and metal or anything that requires multiple people that are part of the same musical organization. Now, when it goes back to those country, pop, hip hop stuff, even some rock bands, you may hear the term hired gun, which actually means that that band member isn't officially part of the band. They basically just get a salary, like the rest of the crew, to get on stage and perform. Another one that you might hear, aside from your typical like guitarist, bass player, drummer, vocalist, is an auxiliary player. Now, an auxiliary player specifically is somebody that may play multiple instruments during a set. They're often there to play things that might have been recorded in the studio that they don't have a full-time band member for, and usually auxiliary players do become hired guns, that term we just talked about. You might see them playing keyboards. You might see them play a brass instrument or another stringed instrument, steel guitar in country a lot. You see auxiliary players play a lot of different things, and usually these people will know how to play a lot of different instruments. Moving on to the typically off-the-road management positions, the first thing I want to talk about is the band's manager, also known as the artist manager, or most oftenly just manager. If you ever hear a band say our manager, this is the person they're talking about. This is the person that oversees their entire career for the most part. They help guide the band to make business decisions. They introduce them to record labels to try and get them a deal. They introduce them to PR people or booking agents, which we'll talk about shortly. Now, managers don't usually make all of the decisions for a band without talking to the band first. There are some cases where some managers that do have a lot of pull in the industry and they have a lot of trust from their bands, they might make decisions without running it by the band. But for the most part, they're there to just guide the band and help them make the best decisions that will be beneficial to their careers. And sometimes these managers will have a day-to-day manager, which is kind of like an assistant manager. This person will usually handle scheduling for the band or maybe booking travel and stuff like that that's not pertaining to touring. This person is there to take care of all the stuff that the band's manager may not have time for, especially because a lot of these artist managers and band managers manage multiple bands, so they have to have another person with them to help with all of this. The next thing on the list to talk about is booking agents. Oftentimes, some people think that band managers are the ones booking shows for their bands, which, if it's a very small band, that may be the case. But 99% of the time in the touring music industry, a booking agent is the one that is there to book shows, festivals, tours, and all of that for their bands. Now, they might work independently, or they might work for a larger firm that has a lot of contacts and stuff like that. There are a lot of different booking agents that specialize in different kind of tours on the road. And there are a lot of booking agents that have been doing this for a very long time where a lot of the industry knows their names. But these are the people that are the ones getting their bands on tours. They're negotiating the money, the guarantees that their bands are going to get. And oftentimes they're the direct line of communication to tour managers on the road, which we'll talk about later, if there are any problems with the shows or the promoters or anything like that. As a tour manager, when I started advancing and doing production stuff for tours, the booking agent is usually the first person that I get all of my information from. Show deals, merchandise splits, what ticket sales are before the tour. All of that stuff is going to come from the booking agent and or their staff. And working hand in hand with them are show promoters or talent buyers or simply promoters. These are the ones that are actually booking shows locally. Or if you're talking about bigger companies like Live Nation or AEG, they're booking full tours on continents and in different countries and stuff like that. Now, don't confuse this with a booking agent who works for the band to get them shows. This is the person that's purchasing that show from the booking agent. So this is the person or the company that is paying for this band to perform wherever they book them. And last but not least, for off-the-road stuff is publicity or PR people, which you might hear often. These are the people that are doing all of the media for the bands that they work for, lining up interviews, trying to get them guest spots on whether it's radio or local TV, or in the day and age we're in, social media plugs, stuff like that. These are the people that are making sure their band is getting out there, that people are seeing them. Oftentimes, if their band does something stupid, this is also the person that is trying to put out fires and make them look better in the press. Now, getting into the on-the-road management stuff, there's quite a few we're going to go over, but let's start at the first one that usually everybody kind of knows, which is tour manager. Now, a tour manager, to put it quite simply, is the person that is making sure that the day-to-day operations of the tour while the band is on the road are running smooth and any bumps in the road are handled and taken care of so nobody else has to worry about anything. They take care of every little thing on the road for the most part. I'm talking about advancing shows, arranging transportation, when bus calls are going to be and when the right times for flights are, coordinating with the local venues, making sure that the hospitality lists are turned in. If there's no tour accountant on the tour, they're the ones taking care of all the finances. Every little thing that happens on a tour usually goes through a tour manager, and their job is there to put out fires if they arise. Now, road manager is an interesting one because that can be used interchangeably depending on who you're talking to. Some people might say road manager when they're talking about a tour manager. But on larger tours, you might have both of them. And where a tour manager takes care of the logistics of the entire tour, a road manager is usually somebody that sticks with one specific band. So it might be an opening band or something like that. You also hear the term road manager a lot when there's somebody out on the road that is basically handling the needs of that specific band while there is a tour manager that's focusing on the tour. So like I said, while a tour manager might be overseeing everything, a road manager is usually there to oversee one specific band and their crew, or sometimes just one specific band while they're on the road. Assistant tour manager is exactly what it sounds like. It's somebody that is there to assist the tour manager. And a lot of times the duties can be the exact same. It all just depends on what that specific tour manager needs from that assistant tour manager. It could be little things like guest list or accounting or media stuff for the band, just to take some of the load off the tour manager if they have too much stuff going on. On some tours, the assistant tour manager may be very involved, and it may seem like they're doing more than the actual tour manager. But at the end of the day, the tour manager is the person that people go to when questions need to be answered. So while an assistant tour manager is doing a lot of work on the road, the buck stops with the actual tour manager that's in charge. A production manager is very similar to a tour manager, but instead of overseeing the logistics of the tour as a whole, they are overseeing the technical aspects and the production of the entire tour. So on larger tours like arenas and stuff like that, and even some theaters, a production manager will also do advances just like the tour manager, except they will be talking to the venue specifically about the show, what kind of stuff they're bringing in, what they need power-wise, what kind of effects they're going to use. And where a tour manager is kind of in charge of the whole tour, the production manager is usually in charge of the crew. If there's like a hierarchy of command, crew people are usually going to go to their production manager if they have any issues, who would then take it up the chain to the tour manager if they need to. On some tours, you might even see a stage manager, and their entire job is to basically communicate across all of the different departments that have something to do with the stage to make sure that everything is organized and working properly. Stage managers are usually one of the first people in the building so that they can check out the stage and the layout of everything. And when the load-in starts, they're the one that's usually directing traffic, telling everybody where they need to go, where things need to be placed. And when set pieces and stuff start making it on stage, they're there to help and help direct with everything. Another thing that they might do during shows, especially if they're stage managers at festivals, is to make sure that all the bands are keeping to a schedule, because with noise curfews and stuff like that, it is very important that every band stays on their set time. A good stage manager will be up there watching the clock, and if a band looks like they might go over, they'll give somebody in that band's crew or the band directly a heads up that they need to end their set. Stage managers are also the point people at loadouts. They're the ones directing hands and helping the crew get everything torn down, putting everything in order, and making sure it gets on the trucks correctly. Now, a crew chief is also one of those terms that you might hear different phrases for. You might hear department head or department lead, but on larger tours, this is usually the person that is in charge of an entire department on a tour. So you might have backline crew chief, audio crew chief, lighting crew chief. And again, you might hear backline lead, audio lead, lighting lead, stuff like that. This is the person that is in charge of that department that when there are issues or decisions that need to be made, that's kind of the person that is in control of the situations. And then when problems arise, which they often do on tour, again, up that chain of command, a crew person would go to their crew chief or their lead, who would then go to a production manager that they need to, or if they need to, and then they would go to the tour manager if they need to as well. Some tours often bring security people with them on the road. You might see one or two, and there's usually a head of security. Now, while that person may be in charge for the personal security of a band or the security backstage at shows, one of their biggest things of their job is that they're going to coordinate with the venue every single day. Because these venues aren't used to the way that these crews and bands operate, the head of security is going to communicate with the venue and let them know what they need specifically or what they may need to look out for. They're the ones that are going to do the meetings with the venue every day and go over the tour passes, who's allowed where, if they have any emergency situations arise, what's going to happen. And if there is a problem in the building, the venue staff is going to go to that head of security to work out the problem. On smaller tours, a tour manager may double as this. On tours that I've tour managed on, a lot of the times when we don't have security, I will be doing security meetings with the venues and stuff like that. And it can often be a production manager sometimes as well. But on larger tours, Usually it's the head of security that handles all of this. Tours will sometimes have touring promoter reps. You might just hear promoter rep, or if it's a one-off show or a festival, you might hear local rep. This is the person that represents the promotion company that booked the band for that event. On larger tours like Live Nation and AEG, it is quite common to have a touring promoter rep on the entire tour that travels on the buses. And they're there to coordinate with the venues and the tour and kind of be the middleman if there's any issues that arise, or if the tour has questions about something or something isn't exactly how it was supposed to be in the show agreement. This is the person that could step in and make sure that it's taken care of. And sometimes these people also do accounting on the road, but not always. Now let's move into all the other various positions there are on a tour. And since we were just talking about accounting, let's bring up tour accountants. Now, on smaller and mid-sized tours, a tour manager may double as a tour accountant and take care of all the incoming and outgoing finances of a tour. But on larger tours, there is a specific role for this. And this person's entire job is to make sure that all of the money on a tour is balanced, accounted for. They have all the receipts for everything, because it's a lot of money that comes in and out on tours. And I'm not just talking about what the band's getting paid and stuff. I'm talking about receipts on the road for hospitality, for gas, for the buses and trucks. If anything needs to be bought at a store, all the little things. This person is going to make sure that the receipts are organized, that people are getting paid, that per diem money is going out, and all of that good stuff. Let's talk about riggers, which you usually only see on like arena and stadium tours, but riggers are a super important job on any tour. Again, with stage managers, one of the first people in the building, because when you go to an arena show or a stadium show, all of the audio and the stage and all of that stuff, that's not just there. It needs to be brought in, and a lot of this stuff needs to be hung up, which is the job of the rigger. Their main job is the safety of everything that is being flown in that arena or stadium. They have to be certified. They go through intensive training, and mathematics is actually a big part of this job. But they're the ones that if you ever see a teardown at a show or a load-in or anything, they're all the way up in the rafters, hanging stuff and all the chains and all the ropes and everything. Super important job on tour, but not often talked about for some reason. Set carpenters, often known as set carps. This is a bigger term for theater-based stuff, but you do hear this thrown around on tour with music acts a lot. This person also may describe their job as staging. This is usually the person that is building the set on the stage, whether it's risers or kind of like background effects and stuff like that. Oftentimes, if there's things that need to be built, this person is very good at carpentry, as the name would suggest, and they can build things out on the road. But typically on tour, this is the person that is in charge of building the actual staging stuff. Again, risers, stairs, all of that stuff, and making sure that everything is set up safe so when the band gets on it and uses it, nothing's falling apart. Wardrobe/dressing room managers and assistants. Now, as the name suggests, this is the person that is taking care of the band's wardrobe and their dressing rooms. Now, this is usually only on bigger tours where there's tons of different dressing rooms, usually arenas and stadiums, or if a band has costumes that they wear on stage. And even if they're not costumes, just show clothes. These people may often have sewing machines out on the road with them and different fabrics that they can fix things if they need to. They may be in charge of washing the clothes and making sure that everything's taken care of for showtime, helping with quick changes during the show. And as far as the dressing rooms, they make sure that everything is set up nice and comfortable so when the band walks in, it's an area that they're comfortable with, you know? And anything that the band might need during the day, these wardrobe and dressing room people will be there to get them what they need. Moving into backline techs. This is kind of an all-encompassing term that covers a few different things, but the word backline in general refers to the instruments and the gear that's on the stage, whether it's amps, guitars, keyboards, drums. That's all backline. So when somebody says they're a backline tech, they could be a guitar tech, a drum tech, a keyboard tech. There's a lot of other different positions. But these are the people that are responsible for maintaining the instruments of that specific member that they work for. So a guitar tech, for example, is setting up the amps, setting up the guitars, changing strings, cleaning, making sure that everything is all in working order. So all the artist or band member has to do is walk on stage, know that their stuff is going to work, and play their instrument. Drum techs do the same thing. Keyboard techs do the same thing. It's a pretty detailed job, man, because it's a lot of gear for a lot of these players. So these people put in a lot of time on the side of the stage working on stuff and making sure that it's in good order. Front of house engineers, also called FOH engineers, which FOH stands for front of house. These are the people that are doing the sound that you're hearing at the shows. So they're the people that are usually out in the center of the room at the audio desk, and they are mixing the show that the crowd is hearing. Now, that job is not to be confused with a monitor engineer. Now, the monitor engineer is the person that is in charge of the sound that the band hears, which you probably guessed that. Now, they're going to make sure that each band member gets exactly what they want to hear in their in-ears or in the monitor wedges. They're there for sound checks. They're there for showtime. They're always keeping their eyes on the band members because during a show, it is very common for a band member to look over at their monitor engineer and tell them to turn something up or down because every room is different, sound changes, and sometimes they may use a new effect or a new instrument and they need that sound change. A monitor engineer is taking care of all of that. And audio techs are taking care of the monitor engineers and front of house engineers. Often on larger tours, you'll have audio techs, which their job is to basically take care of all of the audio desks and all of the audio related stuff for those engineers. Think of audio techs as like backline techs for the band. A lot of times, these techs will have an extensive amount of knowledge, sometimes more than the actual engineers, because they might oversee the PA being hung up. They might be the ones tuning the system every day before the audio engineer comes in to mix the band for sound check in the show. And they're there in case anything arises during the show. If the front of house engineer or monitor engineer needs something or something goes down that they can't get to, an audio tech will usually be the person to take care of that. Now, the next three are pretty similar and used interchangeably, but they are slightly different depending on who you talk to. First one I want to talk about is lighting director. Now, the lighting director is usually the person that is actually at the show, on tour, running everything while the show is going on. You might often hear the term lighting designer. That usually refers to the person who actually built the show. Sometimes lighting directors, which are often referred to as lighting operators, they might not actually program the show that they're running on tour. Lighting designers do that, but sometimes lighting programmers do that too. So there's three different positions here that might be in charge of different things. Some of the biggest and well-known lighting designers in the world don't even tour half of the time. They just work from home or an office designing the show, like everything that you're going to see lighting wise. Then a programmer will be the person that sits at the actual console, programs all of the cues in, and then the director is the person that sits and operates the show. But again, this is one of those where you might hear these terms interchangeably. You might hear somebody refer to a lighting director as a lighting designer. It all depends on who you talk to, and a lot of the times you'll hear lighting director abbreviated as LD. And most LDs will have a lighting tech, similar to the audio tech. A lighting tech is there to oversee the actual lighting system, help with setups, any repairs that need to be done, running power, cabling, and then if anything goes down during a show, lighting techs are often near the stage, so if the lighting director calls them, they can be on stage to fix whatever needs to be fixed. Moving on to video directors, these are often only seen when you're at an arena or a stadium show that has a gigantic video wall or the IMAGs, which are the screens on the side of the stage where they have cameras, on the band members so you can see it in big places. This is the person that's usually set up either on the side of the stage or behind the stage or often off stage, where they're overseeing all of the cameras that are being used and calling what's going to be on that screen. They're very involved in the show. And when there are setups like that, you're often going to see multiple video techs. Just like audio and lighting techs, video techs are there to make sure that the system is running. They're going to help with setup. They're going to help with patching cables. Sometimes video techs will often double as cameramen or camera women during the show if they don't have enough people out there. And these techs will usually have, over-the-ear headphones on so they can hear the video directors and know what to do. A director may call to them and say, hey, I see something over there, like move the camera over there, stuff like that. Special effects technicians, also just called SFX techs. These are the people that are taking care of any kind of usually non-pyro related effects that you're going to see at a show, whether it's confetti cannons or CO2, cryo, stuff like that. Their main job on tour is to take care of all of those effect systems, making sure that they're running, and they kind of specialize in that area, especially if it comes to CO2 with gas tanks and stuff like that. This is not to be confused with a pyro technician who, again, just like riggers, has to be certified and go through a lot of training to do this stuff. This is the person that is not only firing the pyro on the stage at the shows, whether it's flames or actual explosive cues, but a lot of times they're actually prepping it every day. They are backstage in their own room, putting together all of the pyro canisters and all of that. And then they also have to do a demo with local fire marshals every day. So this person also has a lot that they have to go through, especially with safety. So they're very important. Going on to what I think is one of the most underappreciated roles on any tour, the merchandise manager. This is the person that is in control of all of the merchandise on the tour. And when I say all of the merchandise, I mean not just the product itself, not just selling it to fans or anything like that. This person is doing all the accounting. They may be doing all the reordering, making sure that stuff is shipped to the right place in the right time. There is so much that goes into this job, and I feel like merchandise managers don't get the credit they deserve because, truth be told, they're the only person on a tour that is actually bringing in income for the band rather than being a cost for the band. On smaller to mid-sized tours, you might often see the merchandise manager rather, behind the table, selling everything to the fans every single night. At larger shows, arenas and stadiums, they'll count in with the venues and make sure all the numbers are correct. And at the end of the night, you're talking sometimes settling out 5 to 6 figure numbers. This is something that a merchandise manager has to handle every night. I mean, accounting is a big part of this job as well. And then similar, but kind of not, just another people-pleasing job, VIP managers. Now, on a lot of tours, usually bigger ones, you'll see VIP managers, even when smaller tours do have VIP sessions and stuff. But on larger tours where there's a lot of organization to everything, you're going to have somebody on the road that handles all of the VIP stuff, whether it's meet and greets or signings or a quick live performance before doors open. This person is in charge of making sure that everybody that has a VIP ticket is able to get in. They're there basically as customer service. If anybody has a problem, they're usually going outside to check everybody in and wrangle everybody inside, handle the meet and greets, all that kind of stuff. And for the last part of this list, some of the more unsung heroes of tour, drivers. Let's start at bus drivers. Exactly what the name implies. These are the people that are driving the tour coaches that are getting the band and the crew safely to the next venue. And that's what blows my mind. I feel like bus drivers don't get enough credit, but our lives are literally in their hands every single night. And I will say a bus driver can make or break a tour because I've been on tours where we've had excellent drivers where everybody can sleep great every night and everybody feels safe. But on the flip side, there might be some drivers that drive a little more rough and it is harder to sleep. But either way, these people are very important because they keep us safe while we're touring, they keep the band safe while they're touring, and they get us to the next show. Kind of similar to bus drivers, truck drivers. As the name implies, these are the people that are driving the trucks, the semis, that take all of the gear that is necessary for a show from one place to another. And on larger tours, you may hear the term lead driver with each of these positions. You may hear lead bus driver, lead truck driver. These are usually on tours where it's arenas, stadiums, where there's multiple trucks, usually often more than 5 of each, or 5 of each bus and truck. This is a person that is almost like a crew chief in the rest of the departments. They are the driver that everybody's going to go to if they have questions or if they need anything. This is the person that's usually planning the driving route for the rest of the touring party that they're going to take to the next show. They may often kind of do a little bit of accounting too, because every night usually these bus drivers and truck drivers have to stop and fuel up and make sure that everything's safe on their vehicles. But some of the drivers may keep their receipts from gas and turn these into the lead driver so the lead driver can collect everything and then turn it into that bus or truck company that is leasing out buses and trucks to the tour. But that's going to wrap it up for this list, which I actually feel like went way longer than I actually thought it was going to. But if you guys feel like I missed something or you have any questions or I didn't explain something, you can always drop a comment and I'll check all of them and respond to stuff. And again, there might be some positions that I missed. There might be some larger tours that have other departments and stuff that I didn't cover. If I didn't, I apologize. Don't take anything personal. These are just the very common ones that you'll usually see on most tours. But to everybody that watched, thank you so much for your time. I hope this answered some questions for you. You can follow me on other social media. My handle on everything is @TankTheTech on most everything. I also stream on Twitch from time to time, so you can join us there. But until next time, wherever you are in the world, be safe, be kind to each other. I love you all, and I will be back very soon.